Hey Void, welcome back to my channel, and today I will be discussing why I will never reread Harry Potter and other series like it. For this one I had to take notes because I have a lot to say. I have quite a bit to say, and in order to hit everything that I want to talk about, I decided to break things up. And though I will not reread Harry Potter and other series that I will mention later in this video, it doesn't necessarily mean I don't like the author or that the story didn't help me in some way during some part of my life. It just means that I can't reread them now and they will no longer be sitting on my bookshelf. That is pretty important to me. So for me in particular, I only keep books in my bookcase if I really like them. Like, very rarely do I have favorite books because I end up like changing my favorite book every 2 minutes. So the books I keep on my bookshelf are books that I feel like I can reread over and over and over again. Like, the story is still fresh to my eyes, I'm still getting something out of it, and I feel like this is a story that resonates with me and should stay in my life. So to start, I'm going to start in the beginning, how Harry Potter and other such series have helped me grow. So I started reading Harry Potter back in 4th grade. So 4th, 5th grade, I started moving from the shortest chapter books like Magic Tree House into the bigger ones. And at first, Harry Potter intimidated me because, you know, you got the Order of the Phoenix, which is like, looks like 1,000 pages, and then the Deathly Hallows, which is just as big. So the very first time I read Harry Potter, I only made it through the first 3 books. I think those are like the shortest books, which is probably why I went through them, and I stopped. I was like, yo, this is actually pretty decent. So a month or so later, I went back and I tried it again, and I reread it from the very first book, and I completed it to the 7th. After that, I allowed myself to watch the movies because, like most people I assume, I like reading the books before I watch the movie, so I have an idea of what I'm getting into, and so that when I watch the movie I know, hey, this wasn't in the book, this was added in the movie, this actually makes the story flow a little better. Like other book series like The Mortal Instruments, Percy Jackson, the entire universe. When I say Percy Jackson in this series, I mean the entire universe unless stated otherwise. The Immortal Life of Nicholas Flamel, Divergent, Hunger Games, you know, those beginners dystopian fantasy books that like bridge people into that genre, I read, and they stuck to me for a very long time. Recently I tried to reread Harry Potter, of course, and I couldn't get through it. I couldn't do it. And at first I was like, you know, it's probably reader's fatigue. I've read this story so many times and I'm skipping over lines because I know what's going to happen. I know what it is, blah, 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 blah. And so I wrote it off as that. And I tried to pick the book up again. And I was like, you know, I'm really not getting through this. And so I was like, maybe it's not me. Maybe it's not me. And, you know, maybe it is me. But I do know that it wasn't reader's fatigue, and it wasn't me just being tired of the story. It was something else altogether, and that brings me to changing the story. So, as we all know, J.K. Rowling, love her to death. Kind of. We'll get into that later. J.K. Rowling will consistently add or change or add little snippets of the Harry Potter series on her Twitter or other forms of social media that wasn't necessarily verbatim written in the book. For example, saying Albus was gay. You know, cool, nice way of having representation in books, but it kind of like snowballed, like hit me in left field, because in the books I had no inclination of Albus being gay. Not that you could tell that someone's gay from their actions or words or anything, but it was never explicitly said, nor was it foreshadowed in like a flashback or something like that. And J.K. Rowling just, you know what? Yeah, Dumbledore's gay. I made that decision. And then, of course, you have The Fantastic Beasts, which is supposed to be a series that takes place prior to Harry being born, and The Cursed Child, which wasn't necessarily written by J.K. Rowling, but she did help write the play, and it follows Harry's children and that whole fiasco, which I will completely ignore because, to be completely honest, I didn't read it because I can't do it. So J.K. Rowling changing the story had me changing timelines and events that was solidified in my head. So, like I said before, prior to me even really liking Harry Potter, I've read the series twice. After I told, I've allowed myself to like it, I've read the series 3, 4, 5 times. So when I would open Tumblr or Instagram, and one of the people I follow was like, yeah, J.K. Rowling changed this part of the story, I now have to go back in my head and be like, okay, what does this now affect? Right? What does this, how does this change the original story? Because the original story focuses on Harry fighting Voldemort. That's it. That's the entire premise. Harry Potter growing up, discovering he's a wizard, and defeating the Dark Lord to save the wizarding world. And I'm not going to say I don't like the supplementals. Like, I love Fantastic Beasts. I love Fantastic Beasts, and the idea of the Cursed Child was appealing, but it was totally unnecessary, along with all the tidbits on characters and settings that, oh yeah, I forgot to mention this in the books, but this is here, and that's that, and this and this. Like, write another book. Say, just stop. Like, we love your story the way it was. And and to take a side note from Harry Potter, the same thing I feel like happened to me when I was reading the Trials of Apollo. Like, I gave Trials of Apollo a try because I loved Percy Jackson and the Olympians, and I love Heroes of Olympus. I love the Kane Chronicles. Like, Rick Riordan was my guy. He's my favorite author for a good bit. So I was like, I'm really liking what he's putting out there. Let's try some of his other stuff. Tried Trials of Apollo, and it's like, Magnus Chase, love the characters, but the story, it wasn't doing anything to me anymore. And a part of me is thinking that, it's probably because I'm growing older and all this other stuff. But then I'm like, no, because if that's true, I wouldn't like rereading Percy Jackson. I wouldn't still keep Heroes of Olympus on my bookshelf. Like, if it's truly me growing older and feeling totally different, then I wouldn't like these past novels. And a part of me is thinking it could be just I'm missing what used to be. I'm missing that authenticity that came with their writing when they weren't pushing things out to money. And that's something I'm going to talk about later in this video. Them just making more books and doing all this other stuff for money, which I'm not going to hate on them. Making money through writing is very, very, very hard. It's just I'm a reader, and I like what I read, and if it's not hitting for me, my opinion of you is going to change. And it's just what happens. Loss of love over the MCs. So, Harry Potter was never my favorite character. Never. Very rarely is my favorite character the main character. Or the main characters. Like, Hermione didn't grow on me until I watched the movies, and I loved Emma Watson. I loved Emma Watson, and I was rereading it. I was like, hey, she's actually pretty cool. And Ron didn't hit better for me. My favorite characters were Draco Malfoy, Remus Lupin. Lupin hit different. And that was it, I think. Yeah. Remus and Draco were my favorite characters, which is why it made me really sad when Lupin was done wrong, and I was really looking forward to a redemption arc for Draco. But that's another story. I'm going to talk about books where I actually like the main characters, starting with The Mortal Instruments. Hated Clary. Clary does not count. She does not count as the main character in my head. Let's talk about Jace. Jace to me, was what, like, Cassandra Clare was trying to make Jace this picture perfect bad boy, and she kind of did it. He was actually pretty good. In fact, alright, let me go back on my comment. I didn't hate Clary. I hated Clary with Jace. Just like I didn't necessarily hate Jace. I just hated Jace with Clary. Like, that was a relationship I thought never should have happened, because the character growth in both of those characters would have happened better if it happened apart. Plus, I can never ignore that incest portion. That wasn't incest. It just gave me the Fosters, PTSD, and I can't go through that again. Over the series, you know, I really thought the Mortal Instruments should have ended at book 3, which is what Cassandra Clare intended, and that's what it felt like. It felt like, oh my goodness, this is the finale, this is it. Ironically, the very last book, the 6th book, which name is escaping me, was my favorite book in that entire series. Period. However, over the course of the story, I couldn't keep up with Clary or Jace, and in the books where there were shifting point of views, like Heroes of Olympus, I felt like I found myself liking the point of views of side characters who eventually became main characters more than the original main characters. Like in Heroes of Olympus, I found myself liking Hazel's point of view, which is why I really loved the Doors of Hades? The House of Hades. Which is why I like the House of Hades, because the majority of it was in her point of view. Just like Leo, I ended up liking his point of view a lot more than Jason or Percy. And my love for Annabelle was dying out. Like, the Annabeth that I fell in love with in Percy Jackson and the Olympians wasn't the same Annabeth that I got to know in Heroes of Olympus. And most of it is, you know, character growth and all that other stuff. I'm mixing up stories. I'm not mixing up stories, but I'm talking about more than one story at once. Like, I'm flipping back and forth. But I was losing love over Percy, who was the main character. And then most of the time, my loss of love for main characters was because they were basically written out. Like, I loved Grover. I was looking forward to Grover in Heroes of Olympus, and he wasn't there. So I'd be scrolling through Tumblr reading like incorrect PGO quotes, and I'm like, who's Grover? And then I beat myself over it, because it's like you used to love Grover, and now you forgot he even existed. And then it's like, that wasn't me. Rick Riordan kind of just wrote him out. Am I right or am I right? He wrote him out. Simon, Mortal Instruments. Hate characters like him who, I'm kind of turning into a rant, but this all ties back in and why I won't reread the series. I hate characters like Simon, who's more like, oh, I'm in love with this girl, but I'm not going to tell her, and I'm going to get really, really, really pissed when she falls in love with someone else. And I considered him a main character. I don't know if he was an actual main character or Cassandra Clare considered him a main character, but to me he was a main character, and my love for him was lost until he got over Clary. And then it was lost again as the plot thickens. Back to Harry Potter. Most of the time it wasn't even the character themselves. It was like I mentioned before, where the author was adding stuff to the story, and the story negatively impacted the timeline, which therefore negatively impacted my love for the main characters. Like, I lied. I did read a portion of The Cursed Child. I hated Harry and the Cursed Child. He was not the father I thought he was going to be. Like, when you read Harry Potter, you're like, oh my gosh, Harry's going to be the best dad, because if anyone, he knows what growing up in an abusive and unloved household feels like. He's going to try his hardest not to let any of his kids feel like crap. But that's what happened. That's what happened. And that's that on that. I couldn't love Harry after that. And I hate to say it, but J.K. Rowling endorsing and helping write that play made me not like him even more. Let's move on. So, one other thing I ended up doing was that I started falling more in love with the idea of the book or the world that was created more than the actual story. And I feel like this happened to be more with the Mortal Instruments than Harry Potter, but I still feel that with Harry Potter. So in the Mortal Instruments, I was fascinated with downworlders. Like the idea of shadow hunters versus downworlders, and there's 5 different downworlders and they all like don't like each other. Like, I was like, this is a great comparison between, you know, the world at the moment with, you know, shadow hunters being white people, the Caucasians, with their uppity attitude and not necessarily like hating downworlders, but having this sort of prejudice against them. And then downworlders being minorities, and I can further go into maybe later in a different video on what minorities I think represented each downworld breed. But that was so well thought out. Like, I was reading through it and I was like, oh my gosh, this is really, really, really great. But it was never investigated. It was never looked into. And me rereading the series, I read The Mortal Instruments 3 times. I read some of the individual books more than 3 times, but from start to finish the series, I read it 3 times. And I found myself, you know, being all like, why didn't Cassandra Clare take this direction? Like, in my opinion, this is far more interesting than Clary falling in love with Jace and, you know, Sebastian coming into the mix. Not that that's not important to the story, because it was. It affected the entire world for them. But those moments with Simon when he was a vampire, what's stopping us from seeing the vampire coven with Raphael? What was stopping that from happening? What was stopping Cassandra Clare writing Alec truly feeling what a warlock's life felt like with Magnus? And I've never seen the TV show, but I think they did it in there. I think I'm gonna try it out. I couldn't get through it. I think I'm gonna try it out just for seeing how they adapted Cassandra Clare's world onto the screen. And the more I got into it, I kept thinking, why didn't she do this? Why am I rereading this if I know exactly what's going to happen and I want it? Like, she could have taken this turn. Cassandra Clare, in my opinion, could have written an entire book just focusing on the downworld, and I would buy 100 copies of it. 100 copies. Because the world that she created was so intricate and so interesting and so out there and so different from every other fantasy dystopian book that I've read at that time, that I couldn't understand why she stopped there. Like, I know she wrote other books within the same world, but it was shackled with stories I didn't care about. I didn't care about the stories. I was more in love with the world, which is why I turned more into fan fiction that investigated just the world. Going into it. Going to Harry Potter. Who wasn't in love with the magical world of Harry Potter at Universal? Like, who didn't start reading Harry Potter until you went to Harry Potter Land? Let's be honest. It's the glamour of Harry Potter that drew people into reading the book. There are so many people that I've spoken to who knew about the world before they knew the story, or who've seen the movies before they've seen the story. Therefore, they have an image in their head already of what this world could be, what it could all encompass, what I could see and feel at that moment without actually delving into the story. So that that came with me hating the story. I started hating Harry Potter before I started liking the world more. And the same thing, it's similar to what happened to me when I was reading The Mortal Instruments. I was like, Harry, I never understood this. Harry, you didn't know you were a wizard until you were 11 years old. 11 years old is when Harry Potter discovered that he was a wizard and was catapulted into that world. I could have sat and, okay, we kind of got this. But I could have sat through 2 chapters worth of Harry just acting boggled to the wizarding world. And I guess this is kind of with, you know, him going over to Ron's house and seeing how a true wizarding family functions, and what's his name, Hagrid taking him to Diagon Alley to get his books and all this other stuff. But to me, it just like felt like Harry was just all like, cool, let's roll with the punches, when discovering that he was a wizard. Like, Hermione being a muggle-born wizard, that point of view I feel like should have been looked into, because that is someone like me looking into the wizarding world and discovering everything, and comparing it to someone like Ron, who was a wizard-born wizard. He was born in a wizarding family who already knew all this stuff, and that was something that could have been explored that didn't. And so that really got me daydreaming, like, maybe this is what could happen if this did happen. And, you know, reading fan fiction, reading headcanons, looking at fan art and all this other stuff that made me falling in love with the world and the ideas that could have happened and been written that didn't, instead of the story and what J.K. Rowling intended for us to love. So that was my falling out on both of those stories. It kind of happened to me with Percy Jackson, just a little bit, but in my opinion, Rick Riordan did a great job with weaving in details about the world with his story. And it could be because he's a more experienced writer. I don't know. It could be because I like him more, that I identify that over J.K. Rowling and Cassandra Clare. But in my opinion, that's just what ended up happening. Finally, the magic is lost, and the story becomes all about the money. This is what I hated the most. It's what I don't like about books turning into films and all this other stuff. So, I'm not going to tell an author not to profit off their books, because that's one of the things that makes me want to buy books, is to support the author and make sure they have, you know, a way of living from doing something that they love. And in a way, that means mass marketing, and that comes with putting things out to get people to read your books, like movies, follow-up books, going on tour, starting a YouTube channel and talking about it, and, you know, all this other stuff. But for these, I keep talking, I had other series to mention, but The Moral Instruments and Harry Potter stuck out to me the most. Towards the end, all they were focusing on was popping books out to make money. I hate to say it. J.K. Rowling should have finished Harry Potter and stopped. That should have been it. A trickling, just the Fantastic Beasts with just the stories on the Beasts should have happened. I don't think the movie should have happened with Dumbledore's backstory or Grindelwald or any of that other stuff, because it made things canon. And to me, the love of reading comes with leaving the readers something to dream about, leaving the readers with the ability to take the story somewhere, which is why I think me and a bunch of other people didn't like The Cursed Child. I didn't even really like the epilogue, but I digress. A bunch of us didn't like The Cursed Child because it was J.K. Rowling telling us what's happening to these characters in the future, instead of allowing us to make it up for ourselves. It takes away the magic from us. You're telling me what happened. I can't dream that Harry became something other than an Aurora. I can't dream that Ron and Hermione ended up breaking up and Hermione chose better. I can't do that. It solidifies the wars against fans who ship characters outside of who they were placed with. Because I know a bunch of people who strip Jerry, which is Draco and Harry, together because he's with Ginny. And that not only was solidified in the epilogue, but it was concrete in The Cursed Child. I didn't see Harry ending up with anyone, and I don't think he should have ended up with anyone, but that's what happened. And with J.K. Rowling putting all this stuff out, and you have these fans and other people being all like, well, the author said it, it's canon, which is usually true, but it takes away the magic for me. It takes away my imagination to dream about the story differently, and it takes away my ability to enjoy fan fiction and other people's writings about in your world, because in my heart I know that this can never happen because their ending was closed. It was boxed up. And nothing could go different from that. For the Mortal Instruments, it's a little different because I stopped with the Mortal Instruments, and I think I read the Clockwork series, so like the Clockwork Prince, Clockwork Angel, Clockwork Princess series, and I did Shadowhunter Academy, and I mainly only read Shadowhunter Academy because I was still in love with Simon and Alec and Magnus. For Cassandra Clare, she did a little better. So with the book titles mentioned before, Shadowhunter Academy, the new series that she come out with just following Magnus and Alec, and with the Clockwork series and the other one, which I don't remember. Oh, the Dark Artifacts, that one. She allowed us to get other glimpses of the world. For the Clockwork series, it was the past. The Dark Artifacts, it was the future. And then with Shadowhunter Academy and the new series following Alec and Magnus, it's following the main characters and what they're doing now. I feel like I would have read them and would have enjoyed them if I already if I didn't not like this story. Like if I didn't fall out of love in the story, I could have just read it how they were, which is her expanding on the world. However, I know it was mainly for money. That's her. People usually say 15 minutes, but I'm gonna make it 2 years of fame. 2 years sounds about great. She, in my opinion, Cassandra Clare was writing too much in that universe, and I found myself feeling genuine dislike for Cassandra Clare's writing. That is until I took a break from that world and picked up something different. So, where is it? Magisterium, which is a middle grade fantasy series written by Cassandra Clare and another author whose name is escaping me. Yes, it is. I love that. I read the first 3 books, and that made me re-like Cassandra Clare's writing. As problematic as her first book seemed, I still liked her writing, and I didn't feel like that was a money scam with people just buying it because Cassandra Clare's name's on it. I genuinely felt like she liked writing that book, which made me like reading that book. You know how that like correlates? And it wasn't a money grab. I know I said it was mainly Mortal Instruments and Harry Potter, but I'm going to mention literally any book by Riordan. I feel like I've read almost all of them. Where is it? This book, which is the survival guide, the King Chronicles Survival Guide, which is the first book I bought by Riordan. Like I said, was a great way to show the world with the Egyptian gods. And there's one for like the Heroes of Olympus, not Heroes, for the Percy Jackson's like world, but I didn't look into it. That was great on Rick Riordan's part. However, it didn't need to be done, which is why I also think that's a part of a money grab. But I liked it still. So this sounds really, really, really bad, but I feel like it doesn't feel like I'm just grabbing you, I'm just buying my books, I need money, and it be absolute trash. It's only really like, I'll give you my money, do this money grab if it's good, which is why I know Rick Riordan didn't like the Percy Jackson movies, which is why he doesn't endorse the movies, even though I do think he gets like a portion of the revenue, because it was absolute trash and it didn't represent his books well. He, in my opinion, is a great example of doing that money grabbing crap the right way. So to sum up, I will never reread Harry Potter, nor buy the books. I will never reread the Mortal Instruments. I used to own the books and I gave them away. I exchanged them for better books. I don't think I will ever read, I will never reread books by Riordan except for the King Chronicles, Percy Jackson and the Olympians, and the Heroes of Olympus series. And the aforementioned points that I made before are the reasons why. And if you agree, comment down below. I want to see your opinions on this matter, because it's not something I see a lot of people doing. And I don't actually know if people reread or like do what I do and reread books over and over and over again until you get sick of them. But if you are, comment down below, hit the subscribe button if you are interested in the types of talks I have, and check me out. Bye.